wake up, wake up, wake up. Let's go. It's time to go. It's time to go. Let's go, let's go. Come on. Let's go.
Yeah, today's the day. Hey, why are you sleeping? Let's go, let's go, let's go. It's time to go.
Come on, it's time.
What time is it?
Convocation time.
Gotta go. Yeah, let's go. There's a carpool here. Yeah.
Well, you can't say they're not passionate about their jobs.
The great teachers of Fort Worth ISD have plenty of reasons to celebrate the new school year.
They will be preparing all students for success. All students. Success in college, career, and community leadership. All students. A-L-L, all.
Well said. And welcome all to Fort Worth ISD Convocation 2017.
Don't you wish you could just bottle that energy?
Good morning and welcome to the Convocation 2017. We're happy to have all of our teachers, students, faculty, staff, and administration here with us this morning to kick off the 2017 school year. I hope you greatly enjoyed your summer break, and now you're back, refreshed and ready to go for the 2017 school year. We're ready to get things started, and all we're doing right now is thinking about the impact we can make on our students. We know that your valuable setup time in your classrooms is the most important thing for you, and as we get our teleprompter back up, I'm going to keep on going. We decided to keep you on campus this year so you can be close to your classrooms and not spend all day coming back and forth to Wilkerson Grinus for this event. We don't have a teleprompter, so I'm going to go ahead and thank our board for being here and supporting us today. We have with us our Board of Trustees President, Toby Jackson. We have with us Trustee Ann Sutherland. Christine Moss. Our newest board member, Anael Luebanos. Trustee Ashley Paz. And Trustee Norm Robbins. As I was joking this morning, I am not a professional actor, and this is absolutely proof of that. Nevertheless, we're very excited also to be joined by the Southwest Jazz Band under the direction of Adam Kramer. Let's give them a round of applause. They'll be playing again in about an hour when we wrap up. And making our audience up here in the classroom, in the audience here, we have student leaders from two district-wide groups working to bring about positive change on our campuses. The Superintendent's Education Advisory Council and United Voices for Change. To our students, thank you very much for being here. Now you saw the video to start Convocation, and that was shot in the home of the Rodriguez family, who are also part of our Fort Worth ISD family. Mom, Jamie Rodriguez, teaches at Trimble Tech. Dad, Juan Rodriguez, played the part of a teacher in the video. And our two breakout stars both attend North High Mount Elementary. They are Elena and Antonio Rodriguez. Thank you for the entire family for being here at our convocation. And thank you to the other teachers in the video, the excitable carpoolers. They're watching from their schools today. Darcy Dupree from Southwest High School. From Daggett Elementary, Stacy Gordon. And from Trimble Tech, Raquel Rosales, Argelia Mesa, and Derek Robertson. Thank you all for being here. In our audience here today, we have several more outstanding teachers, and they are the finalists for our 2017 District Teacher of the Year. We have with us from John T. White Elementary, Julissa Gomez. Keith Bird is here from Polytechnic High School. From TCC South, Fort Worth ISD's Collegiate High School, Cecilia Sanchez Hill. And from William James Middle School, Chantel Phelps. Two additional Teachers of the Year, in fact, the winners of the Teachers of the Year celebration are Lindsay Laster from Meadowbrook Elementary and Chris Workman, who was at Diamond Hill Jarvis High School, now he's at Arlington Heights. Give him a round of applause. And as I said, out of this stellar group, Lindsay and Chris were named Elementary and Secondary Teachers of the Year at a great event this May. What I remember most from that evening was the two of them in the back seat of the car. It was for our video, and much like at the beginning of this morning, we had to have several takes. In that process, we got to know each other quite well. Lindsay and Chris, please come on up here for a moment. Lindsay, what do you do at the start of the year, right at the beginning, to get fourth graders excited about learning?
Yes, I do two things. The first thing I do is I concentrate on relationship building, and the second thing I do is focus on relative instruction. So as I'm getting to know my students, their parents, as I force them to get to know one another, I'm concentrating on what are your interests, your abilities, your strengths, and not just academic, your personal, what are your aspirations, so that as I'm planning and going back to the things I've done before, I can see, does this actually meet the needs of my students? And if it doesn't, how can I empower them to take ownership of their learning through using their strengths to tackle what we have for them here in fourth grade? And it keeps them coming back busy and ready to go for the year.
Thank you very much, Lindsay. Personifying our focus on rigor, relevance, and relationships. Now, Chris, as a math teacher, you have teenagers coming back from a long summer. How do you keep them motivated for learning math?
That's a great question. As one of my colleagues says, I look for the real life value. I find with teenagers that they know exactly what the significance and the relevance is of the work that they're doing and what they're learning. Engagement is a lot easier to move forward with. Also mix in some creativity, some of that wow factor, what just happened in the classroom, mix in some interactivity so they can work on their social skills. But with those things, those all help capture their mind.
Excellent. Thank you very much to both of you. Again, it's not only about the academic skills, but also about social and emotional development. Test scores aren't everything, but they do matter. And we are celebrating, we're very excited about the STAR test results that actually are some of the most encouraging that we've received in a long time. Fort Worth ISD has achieved the highest number of Met Standard campuses in the history of the current state accountability system. So students and teachers, please give yourselves a round of applause. Not only are we excelling at our highest achieving campuses, but we're also cutting back on the numbers of campuses that are identified as improvement required. 4 years ago, we had 28 campuses. Last year, that was down to 22, and today we have only 14 campuses that are designated as improvement required. That is very significant, and of the 14, 4 of those are our leadership academies. So our goal is to be in the single digits next year and down to 0 here in the near future. Thanks for your hard work, the relationships, as was said by our STAR teachers, the relationships you build with our students and their families, your academic leadership. We are on track and gaining momentum, and know that this next school year, we will continue to focus our attention on resources in the 3 areas: early childhood literacy, middle years math, and college and career preparedness. And we'll do everything possible to provide you with what you need to do your best work in your classrooms. And for Fort Worth ISD, our new learning model, what it requires for the next generation of learning. What is next generation learning? Well, hang on to your hat, because we're about to get some eye-opening insight from our keynote speaker. He is Jamie Kasab, or Jaime Kasab, depending on your perspective. His job is not a job, it's a calling. He's the Chief Education Evangelist at Google. And as his title suggests, he has a passion for education and for communicating the need to transform what education looks like. I met Jamie in Phoenix when I was superintendent of Phoenix Union. He started a computer programming and coding academy alongside of our instructional leaders that is changing the lives and the destinies of students, urban students, low-income students, language minority students, students of all backgrounds in Phoenix, and we look to replicate that same kind of success here in Fort Worth. So with no further ado, I'd like to introduce my friend, Jamie Kasab. Thank you, buddy.
Thank you, Dr. Scribner. Thank you, board. Thank you, audience. I'm just going to keep spinning like this until I get dizzy. As Dr. Scribner mentioned, I want to thank everyone for being here. I'm the Chief Education Evangelist at Google. I want to start with some contact information. I'm pretty active on Twitter. There's some great conversations happening around education on Twitter. There's some great folks to follow. Every once in a while, I'll post something about Game of Thrones, so you can ignore those. Great episode last night, by the way. Who watched it? Yeah, all right. So I want to start by introducing myself. I've been at Google for the last 12 years. And in those 12 years, I was part of the original team that launched Google Apps into education. This is a picture of me and the CIO at ASU, back when I had less gray hair and a flatter stomach. But that's me and the CIO launching Google Apps at the university level back 12 years ago. Since then, we launched Google Apps in the K-12. Now we have 70 million users using our tools. And then I launched Chromebooks in education with a small team, and now we have Chromebooks in schools all over the country. My job is to work with our teams at Google that are doing things in education and make sure that we're focused on the right stuff when it comes to how we can further technology in education. But I want to start by talking about the importance of education and why education is important. Why do we care about it? Why do we gather at events like this? Why do we get so excited about the school year? I get to travel around the world and talk to people all over the world, and I get to talk to audiences like this about why education is important. And we understand that education is what disrupts poverty. Education changes life of a family. And this is a personal passion, as Dr. Scribner said. This is a personal passion for me because I'm one of those kids that we often talk about when we talk about what's possible for our students. I am a first-generation American, born and raised in Hell's Kitchen, New York. Any New Yorkers in the room? There's one. All right. We're usually pretty loud, so you can tell where we are most of the time. But this is the Hell's Kitchen, not the one that you find today, but the one from the 60s and 70s and 80s. It was not a nice place to be. As a matter of fact, it was one of the areas that you avoided if you ever visited New York. A lot of crime, a lot of poverty, a lot of drugs, a lot of things were happening in this neighborhood. My mother had come to New York escaping poverty and government oppression, like millions of immigrants before her and millions after, from Argentina. I was born and raised there and with a single mother on welfare and food stamps. So I'm one of those kids that we often talk about. And for me, education was my answer. I can see that those that were successful were those that had an education. So I went to high school, went to college, went to graduate school, and I get to stand in front of you because of education and all the things that I've been able to accomplish. Now, I've had some amazing milestones. I've done amazing things in my career as far as I'm concerned and things that I care about. I had one of those milestone moments 2 years ago now when the First Lady of the United States, Michelle Obama, as part of her Reach Higher initiative, asked me to come speak to 200 kids about the importance of education. 200 kids that were experiencing what I was experiencing in their lives. And I said, let me check my calendar. No, you say yes, you show up. And when I got there, you spend time in the East Wing of the White House, and eventually this took place in the East Room, and this is what it looks like when you speak in the East Room of the White House. Doesn't this look like, I don't know if you can put it up there, but doesn't this look like one of those pictures you get at the state fair? Where they green screen you into Photoshop you into the thing? Actually, when I showed this picture to my friends, they weren't impressed that I spoke at the White House. They were impressed that I owned a suit. But I have one suit, that's it. So hopefully I don't have to wear it too many times. So that's the American dream, that's the American ethos. If you work hard, you get your education, you can take a kid like me from Hell's Kitchen, New York, and put him in the East Room of the White House to speak to other kids about education. That's what we all strive for. But here's the thing, and this is for all the teachers that are out there, that the impact that we have on students goes on for generations and generations. That the impact that we have on students, whether you teach for 2 years or 20 years or 40 years, goes on and impacts students that you will never meet in your entire life. Because now I have my kids. This is them. You can see them up there. These are my kids. Don't awe them. You don't know them. I have a 24-year-old, a 16-year-old, and a 2-year-old. Some of you are realizing I can only handle one child at a time. I like it this way, just one every couple of decades. And my 24-year-old is living in Hell's Kitchen, New York, working, just accepted a job, I shouldn't probably say it publicly, but she's accepted a job with an organization that she's very thrilled about. But we never talked about college. We never had a conversation about whether she was going to college or not. She just assumed she was going to college because I went to college and her mother went to college. She assumed she was going to graduate school because I went to graduate school. And her mother's also a teacher, and she went to graduate school. She assumed I was going to pay for it, but okay, we solved that problem. So that's the impact that we have on students. That they don't know that my 16-year-old, who is now talking about what his higher education experience is going to look like, and my 2-year-old's life, they don't know that the reason they get to do what they do is because of my 4th grade teacher, my 6th grade teacher, or my 9th grade teacher. That's the impact that we have in education. And if that's true, then we should probably take education pretty seriously. And the first thing we have to recognize is that we don't live in this world anymore. We don't live in a world where we can prepare kids for these jobs of the past. Now, I'm not one of those education reformers that will talk about how education is broken or how teachers are terrible, because I understand the history of education. And besides, education worked for me and worked for millions of kids like me. But what we do need to realize is that what we need to do isn't talk about whether education is broken or not, because we've done some amazing things with education in this country. In 1910, the graduation rate in this country was 8%. The content that we teach kids today, these students that are in here today, is so much stronger than it was when we were in school. How it's improved over the last 20 or 40 years. Most parents won't admit to you the age they stop helping their kids with homework because it's too hard for them. For me, it was 4th grade. Once my kids were out of 4th, I'm like, you're on your own, I don't know that stuff. But the impact that we have on these students, it matters because what we need to think about is how do we prepare our kids for a world that we don't know about yet? What we need to do in education is what our forefathers in education did and ask ourselves, what do we need to do in education? How do we build a model in education that supports the future? Because at the end of the day, that's what our job is in education, is to prepare kids for the future. And we have to recognize that it doesn't look like this. And when we talk about the future, we have to recognize that the future is already here. The Bureau of Labor Statistics predicts that there will be 1 million computer science jobs available in the next 8 to 10 years. Technology and computer science and cloud computing and all the things around technology is where the future is headed. It's every industry, across the board, every state, everything is being affected or impacted by computer science, the cloud, and technology. And parents recognize this. They want their kids studying computer science. We talk to parents all over the country, and 9 out of 10 parents want their kids studying computer science, and yet only 1 in 4 schools in the United States offers computer science. This is an economic issue as well. The average college graduate, computer science graduate, makes about 40% more than the average college graduate. And when you talk about that, even here in the state of Texas, we have to recognize what we see. So I wrote down some stats for you guys. The average computer science graduate in the state of Texas makes $91,000 a year versus the average salary of $47,000 a year. What happens to our communities when we can double salaries? What happens to our most disadvantaged communities if we can put that kind of economic power in the hands of those students? And again, not in the future, not 20 years from now, not 10 years from now, today in Texas, there are 37,610 open computer science jobs available in the state. And in 2015, there were only 2,714 computer science graduates from college. 18% of them were female. Only 6,060 high school students in the state have taken the AP Computer Science exam in 2016, and 24% of them were female. Only 336 schools in Texas offers the AP Computer Science exam or course, and that's 19% of the schools that offer AP programs in the state. Computer science is in everything that we do. Technology is in everything that we do. And we have to recognize that this is happening to us in a slow manner. That what we need to do is recognize where the future is headed. For example, most of us who fly on airplanes, I get to travel around the world, and I'm going to be here and in Virginia later this week. Most of us get on our planes with our technology and our computers thinking that this is something new, but we've been putting technology on airplanes for a long time. This is a picture of a hard drive being loaded onto an airplane in 1956. Now, you could rent this hard drive. You could lease it. You couldn't buy it. There were only like 5 of them. You could lease this hard drive for $3,800 a month. It's a 5 megabyte hard drive. Technology has been part of our lives for a very long time. And in education, it's no different. We've been talking about technology in education forever. Motion pictures were going to revolutionize education in the 1900s. Television was going to revolutionize education in the 1950s. And we've been talking about computers in education since at least the 60s. I took a computer class 100 years ago when I was in 9th grade. I learned how to program in BASIC. BASIC is like one of the first computer science program languages, just telling the kids they don't know this. And I learned how to program in BASIC, and I was told that computers were going to be important in my future. Even though I'd never seen one before, this was the first computer I saw. And I wrote 5,000 lines of code. The old people in the room might remember this. I wrote 5,000 lines of code to make a bird fly across the screen on the Commodore 64. Do you guys remember that? It didn't even look like a bird. It was just a squiggly line that just went across the screen. But it's different today. Technology has a different impact today. Lots of things are happening. For example, we have so much science and research on what good learning looks like. We know what good learning looks like. We just haven't been able to implement it. The model that we use, the one-to-many model, we haven't been able to do the things that we know good learning should look like, how it needs to be relevant, how it has to be engaging, how it has to be personal. We haven't been able to implement these things, and technology is finally at the point where we can start implementing some of these things. We don't need to invent anything new. We don't need to create anything new. We can just think about the greatest research you've read about education, about learning in the last 8 years, in the last 5 years, and ask yourself, how do we use technology to bring these things to life? How do we personalize learning? How do we make it personal? How do we make it relevant and engaging? Technology is finally at the point where it's useful, where we can do that. So that's the first thing that's happening, and it's exciting to see. Second, unlike when I took that computer class, technology has wrapped itself around the core of everything that we do, and we don't even recognize it anymore. For example, how many of you, it's 9:20 in the morning, how many of you have not used technology today? How many of you have not used the web today? There's a couple people like, I left my phone at home. How long did it take us to get to this point? The iPhone is 10 years old this summer. The BlackBerry, kids don't even know what a BlackBerry is. There are 2 kinds of BlackBerry users. I mean, we might have some in the room. There are BlackBerry users that are like embarrassed to have one because they keep it in their pocket. They don't pull it out in public. And then there are BlackBerry users that are like, you're going to pray this thing out of my cold, dead hands. There's always those BlackBerry users. They like the buttons. That's 13 years old. Do you remember, and the kids aren't going to believe me when I say this, but do you remember we used to have to call the internet? Like place a phone call to the internet, and the internet would be busy. And you were okay with this. You're like, I tried to call the internet today, it was busy. Person you're talking to said, did you try another number? Like you had a list of numbers you could call the internet with. And what was your reward when you got online? It was a bunch of pages with words, and it had links to other pages that had words. And you were excited by this. And every once in a while, someone would post a picture on one of those sites, and you'd lose your mind. You're like, everyone, come here, there's going to be a picture on my screen. And it would just go back and forth like this. All right, come back in half an hour, there's going to be a picture on my screen. And today, what's your expectation with technology? If you read my stuff, I'm a huge fan of teachers. And teachers to me are the most patient, the most understanding people in the world. And I've seen teachers turn into a mob at conferences when the Wi-Fi is too slow. Like seriously, like pitchforks and everything. They just are crazy about their technology and making sure that it works. And if that's the way it is for us, we're the generation that was minding our own business when this thing called the internet showed up. What does that mean for a generation of kids who don't know what the world looked like before Google? A generation of kids who don't know what the world looked like before smartphones and tablets and laptops. A generation of kids who don't know what the world looked like before Wi-Fi. Tell these poor kids that there are places in the world that don't have Wi-Fi, and they're like, what? Where? Like, they don't understand that. Now, it's important to point out that I'm not saying that this generation is different than we are. I would be careful with anyone who would come up here and say, this generation is wired different than we are. Their brains work differently. No. They can't do two things at the same time. They do two things at the same time poorly, just like we do two things at the same time poorly. But how they think about learning is different. We learned a certain way, and we think that that's the way that our kids should learn. The problem is that these kids are growing up in a different world. They're learning in a different way, and we need to take advantage of that. This is a picture here of my 16-year-old when he was 13. And he comes into my office showing me his lines of code. He wasn't showing off. He had a bug. He couldn't fix it. He wanted me to help him. He was learning how to code, and I didn't know it. I had no idea. He was playing Minecraft and building things with his friends all over the world, something around a casino, and they were making money. I was waiting for the FBI to break down my door. But he was doing his thing online, learning how to code, learning how to do this, but I didn't know. He didn't come to me and say, hey, what class can I take to learn how to code? He didn't come to me and say, what teacher can teach me how to code? He didn't say, oh, I can't wait till the school year starts, or I can't wait to go to college to learn how to code. He just started learning how to code. I work at Google, and he didn't ask me to learn where he should learn how to code. That's what this generation is about. This generation is about figuring out things and where they are, and how do we take advantage of that. Now, when you think about this generation and you think about the things that they're facing, we have to recognize that they're facing a future that is completely different than the future we faced when we were in their shoes. For example, there's a lot of talk right now. There's been a lot of talk over the last year or two about how we need to bring back American jobs. But the truth is that we all recognize that only about 15% of jobs have been lost to trade. The rest of the jobs have been lost to automation. Go visit an Amazon warehouse that's 5 or 6 football fields big, and you'll see 6 people that work there. The rest of these little orange robots. That's who works in these warehouses now. And even if we can find jobs, the traditional jobs of potentially warehousing or other manufacturing jobs or other things like that, there's a really good chance that those jobs aren't going to be done by people. They're going to be done by these things. and robotics and what's happening with automation and robotics at the same time. If you want to see what this looks like, go to YouTube and watch a video by Boston Dynamics on a robot called HAL. And you can see what HAL could do today. What's this robot going to be able to do in 10 years? In 20 years? And even if we can surpass that and we get through that, maybe there are other jobs that human beings are going to be able to do, then those things might be self-done. You can buy a self-driving car today. 4.5 million Americans in this country make a living driving something, driving people, driving supplies, driving things. What's going to happen in 20 years? It's estimated that most metropolitan areas will lose about 50% of their jobs in the future due to automation and robotics. And this isn't just in manufacturing. This is in sales, retail, finance. We're talking about big finance jobs that are going to be done by algorithms. So when we think about the skills that we need to prepare our kids for, they're not the same. Now, we talk to employers all over the world, and we ask them, what are the most important skills that you need your employees to know how to do? And I'm going to show you the slide from the results of that survey. But the most fascinating thing about this slide is that it's not fascinating at all. That we've been looking at this list forever. We know this list. Problem solving, collaboration, critical thinking, right? We talk about these things all the time. We've been talking about this list for so long, we call them 21st century skills. We're 18 years into the 21st century. You have kids that are starting in school this fall that will be around in the 22nd century. So because we've been talking about this list for such a long time, we think we know what we need to do to prepare our kids with these elements, these characteristics. But we're not taking into account what the future holds. I'll give you a couple of examples. One of the questions that we still ask students is, what do you want to be when you grow up? How many of you have heard that question? What do you want to be when you grow up? Yeah, most kids have heard that question. Well, that question doesn't make sense anymore. That question used to make sense when we were kids, when we had like 20 jobs, right? You could be a businessman, a scientist, an astronaut, we had a firefighter, a police officer. We had general categories of jobs. Jobs did not move that much. There were categories of those jobs, but it wasn't like we were creating a whole bunch of new jobs. Today, I'm working in a job and for a company that didn't exist when I graduated from graduate school, let alone high school. 60% of the jobs of the future don't exist today. So it doesn't make sense to ask kids what you want to be when you grow up. What makes sense is we should be asking students, what problem do you want to solve? What problem spins in your head? Because the more important question is, what do you need to learn to solve that problem? What are the knowledge, the skills, and abilities that you need to solve that problem? How can you start getting those knowledge, skills, and abilities? What classes can you take? In school, out of school, online, offline? Who's solving this problem today? What blogs are out there? What newsletters are out there? What documentaries are out there? They have the world at their fingertips. How do we take advantage of this? This is a picture of our Google Science Fair winners from a couple years ago, and the girl there in the middle, one of my favorite contestants, Anne. She had a problem that she wanted to solve. She was described as not your typical science student, whatever that means. But those are problems she wanted to solve. She had a friend who lived in the Philippines, and her friend didn't have electricity. And she was upset that her friend couldn't read at night, couldn't do homework at night, couldn't do the things that she did with electricity. So she went and invented a flashlight that's powered by the heat of the human hand. And she's 15 years old. Makes my 16-year-old look like a slacker. The power and capability that our kids have, if we let them loose, if we give them the opportunity to start problem solving, is tremendous. I have 100 examples of kids that are 15, 16, 17 years old solving huge problems in our world. How do we turn them on to doing that? When you ask a kid, what do you want to be when you grow up, you're asking them, who do you want to go work for? And one, that's not very exciting, and two, we don't know what those jobs are going to be. When you ask a kid what problem you want to solve, you get closer to what Daniel Pink talks about in his book Drive, about what motivates all of us as human beings. All of us across the board. It's the same thing. Purpose, autonomy, and mastery. That's what we all strive for. What problem do you want to solve? How do you want to solve it? And what are the knowledge, skills, and abilities you need to solve that problem? So that's, we need to focus on problem solving as it becomes the most critical skill that we need our kids to have. We talk about critical thinking a lot, but our education model is set up with limits. We give kids A's and B's and C's. A C is a passing grade. A D could be a passing grade. What's a C in journalism? You got 70% of the facts right, and that's okay? How do we teach our kids to continuously improve, continuously iterate, continuously fix things? Because that's the world we live in today. If you used Google last night, then used it again today, you probably used a different version of Google. Because we update Google 600 plus times a year. That's just one company. We live in a world of constant and consistent iteration. How do we teach our kids to constantly and consistently iterate? We talk about collaboration in education, but the truth is we don't mean it. Education is still set up as a single-player sport, which used to make sense for the old world that we lived in. Today, we live in a team-based world. How do we create collaboration for our students? Imagine as teachers, you hand out a typical test, 9th grade test. Not a quiz, I'm a big fan of quizzes, but let's say test. We know that kids will memorize things to take a test, they'll take the test, and then 3 months later they forget what was on that test. We all know this. It's fact. Imagine in one of those tests, the kids didn't spend time memorizing everything. But instead, at the end of the test, 2 kids came up to you holding the test together and said, you know what, we decided to combine our skill set and work on this together. What would your reaction be? Why are we teaching kids that collaborating is cheating? How do we build real collaboration into our models? I'm not talking about group work. I'm talking about the meaningful collaboration because, and being in New York in the room, I don't want to be cheesy, but there's something beautiful about knowing that in the 12 years that I worked at Google, whatever idea I have, whatever crazy thing I have, that when I put it in front of my team, it's going to get better. That they're going to improve on it. That together we're going to create a better product, a better thing, a better idea, a better strategy. So we need real collaboration, the ability to listen, to ask questions, the ability to change someone's mind, which is something we desperately need right now, the ability to give feedback, the ability to build consensus and influence. One of the things that we look for at Google is called leadership. And do you think by leadership we mean, can you just tell somebody what to do and they'll follow you blindly? No, we mean, can you influence? Can you collaborate? Can you move someone? Can you take a step back and let someone else move? That's what we need in the future that we face, is humans collaborating with each other to solve problems that they're facing. And finally, we want to make sure that we're building digital leaders. Just because these kids were born with technology, doesn't make them technology experts. As a matter of fact, I'm kind of scared. There's a recent study done at Stanford where 82% of elementary school kids can't tell you the difference between a sponsored website and a real news site. 82%. Those kids are going to become 21 years old and they're going to come work at my company someday or some company that I run. And I'm going to ask them to put together some research, some data that I need to present to a financial advisor or to, worse, a government agency, and I'm not going to know whether those things are real or not. How do we build strong digital leaders? The ability to vet and make sense of information, the ability to think about what they're looking at, the ability to take that information and convert it into real intelligence, the ability to be private and secure and safe online. How do we make sure we're doing that in our schools? Because if they're not doing it in schools, where are they going to learn how to do this? We need to make sure that we take this, not think of technology and the internet and the cloud computing as a fad, and help our kids navigate through that world that they face. So what I think we need is a culture shift. We need to think about education from a different perspective. Not that it's broken, that what we need to do is take the best of education and bring it to the next level. We can stop having debates about whether kids should memorize things or not memorize things. The answer is obviously both. We want kids to memorize things. But then at some point, we have to recognize that memorizing things doesn't work anymore. Look, I have a 2-year-old. And for the last year, maybe even longer, because I'm a little bit of a pusher, but like in the last year, I've had those letters, you know, the ones that stick to the side of the bathtub. And I would pull out the A, and I'd show it to my 1-year-old when she was 1, and I'd go, "What's this?" And she'd go, "A." And I'd beam with pride at her genius. And then I would pull out the B, and I go, "What's this?" And she'll go, "A." I'm like, all right, we need to work on this. I want her to memorize letters and numbers and facts and figures. But at some point, we got to take that information and convert it into real intelligence that she can use. It was my favorite stat that I still talk about, is this survey that I saw where 7% of Americans can name you the first 4 presidents of the United States. It's supposed to be a bad thing. But when you think about it, what does it mean? Now, I can ask one of you to name me the first 4 presidents. And if you don't know, you might be embarrassed. And other board members will make fun of you because you didn't know who the first 4 presidents are. Even though they didn't know who the first 4 presidents are. They just didn't get called on. Sound familiar? Or I can give everyone in this room 30 seconds, and all of you can tell me who the first 4 presidents are. Information is a commodity. It has no value. It's what we do with that information. How do we convert that information into real intelligence? So the question isn't memorize the presidents and list the first 4. The better question is, what are the 3 things the first 4 presidents agreed on? What are the 3 things they disagreed on? And how did that shape our country? Who won those arguments? I bet you they understand history better. And I bet you 20 years from now, they'll remember who the first 4 presidents are. We need to help our kids take information and convert it into real intelligence. The good news is I'm starting to see this happen all over the world and all over the country. I'm starting to see these collaborative learning models where kids are working together and building things together, where technology's there, the internet's there, the cloud computing is there to support and enable what they do. It's not the answer. If all we do is take technology and put it on top of our current processes, our current systems, then all we're doing is making the older model faster and more efficient. What we need to do is take technology to the next level. So how is it that we can utilize technology to bring out the models that we need for the future that we face? We need professional development for our teachers. We need to make sure our teachers not only have the knowledge, skills, and abilities that they need, but that we as leaders give them the opportunity to try things and experiment and see what works and what doesn't work, and constantly improve it, constantly measure it, constantly iterate and innovate. Because that's what we need. We need to move away from this model of what we think a classroom should look like because of the way we grew up with it, where kids sit silently and listen to someone all day, to what it should look like and what we know should look like, a more maker model where kids are building things and doing things and making things, and they're excited by being in school, that it's relevant and engaging and personal, and that technology is there to support and enable what they do. I'll give you a Google example of what this looks like. This here is the original google.com. This is it. Not so scary, is it? This is Larry and Sergey putting a couple of machines together. And then this is what Google looks like today. This is one row of the gazillions of rows of servers that we have in data centers all over the world. And there's 3 things I want to point out. The first one is that this can happen anywhere. This doesn't have to be in Palo Alto. That's exciting and scary at the same time. That any of your 4 students, 2 students, anyone can put a bunch of computers together, and because of the capability that they have at their fingertips, can produce the next Google. It doesn't have to happen in Mountain View. It doesn't have to happen in Silicon Valley. It could happen anywhere in the world. But that also means that it can happen in China and India and other places. That's one. Two, this is not what Google looked like on Monday, and then this is what it looked like on Thursday. This took 18 years of what we're talking about. 18 years of problem solving, collaboration, critical thinking, communication, literacy. 18 years to get to this point. And here's the third thing. This is not what a data center is going to look like 18 years from today. There is no future data center, just like there's no future classroom. I get that question all the time. What does the future classroom look like? Every reporter I've ever talked to hates my answer, which is, I don't know. The future classroom starts on Monday, and then Tuesday, and then Wednesday, and then Thursday, and then Friday, and every single day, because this is not what a future data center looks like. There is no future data center. There's just the next light bulb, the next casing, the next cooling system, the next software update, the next hardware update, and so on and so on and so on. It's constant and consistent. That's the future that we live in now. So here's the good news. We are just getting started. We're at the very beginning of this. As much as we think the internet's wrapped itself around the core of everything that we do, in 1995, only 1% of the world was online. It took 10 years to get to the first billion people, 5 years to get to the second billion, and 4 years to get to the third billion. And even today, as much as we talk about technology, as much as it's wrapped around everything that we do, only 40% of the world is online. We're still ahead of the game. We're at the very beginning. Technology is finally useful enough where we can take advantage of it. The internet's finally at the point where we can really grab it and take advantage of it. We're at the very beginning. There's no reason to freak out. Second is that everything that we talked about here this morning is possible and doable. The picture that you're looking at here is a school in Phoenix, Arizona that Dr. Scribner will know very well. It's the Phoenix Coding Academy. 3 years ago, we came up with this idea to create a new kind of school where we take computer science and we embed it into everything that kids do in high school. It's computer science and biology, computer science and history and computer science and English and all the other subjects. That is just part of the project-based language that they use in what they build and what they make. And what was the magic formula for this? What was the solution? Well, under Dr. Scribner's leadership, we hired a principal and 9 teachers about 9 months before the school opened, and we said to the biology teacher, hey, you're going to teach biology and computer science at the same time. Here's a blank sheet of paper. Good luck. And we let them loose, and we let them build it. And they came up with the model. And they used research, and they put together this cross-disciplinary, really cool program. So cool that I'm going to be teaching at this school next fall. I'm going to be teaching a communication class to 10th grade. I've never been more nervous in my life. So as I close out, and I thank you for being here. By the way, this is a regular, because you guys know, this is a regular high school. This is not a charter school. It's not a private school. This is a regular K-12 high school inside the Phoenix Union School District. No extra funding. It's not a Google school. It's no, we didn't raise millions of dollars to do this. This is all within the model that we currently have. And so as I close out here, I need you to think about a 5-year-old. And then I want you to think about whatever technology it is that you use last, whatever it is, whether it's your MacBook, your Chromebook, your iPad extra large, I don't know what they're called, your Samsung, excuse me, your Samsung phone, your iPhone, for me it's this Pixel. It's a Google phone. Usually no one else has one in the room. It's a Pixel phone. This is the latest and greatest technology from the most innovative company in the world. I'm kidding, that was my commercial. But I want you to think about that 5-year-old and realize that this technology, this is the worst thing that 5-year-old will ever see in their life. This is their Commodore 64. In 20 years, that 5-year-old is going to be shopping through the thrift store, and she's going to find us in one of those 50-cent boxes. There's going to be hundreds of these boxes with these phones in them. And she's going to say, my dad had one of these. She's going to want to buy it to bring home to put on her shelf like a museum piece. The way I know some of you might have old technology sitting on your shelf like museum pieces. And she's going to remember. She's going to look at it and say, she's going to say to her younger siblings or friends that she's with, she's going to say, look, that's the port. You guys aren't going to believe me, but this is true. My dad had to plug this into the wall. And her younger friends and siblings are going to say, what? What do you mean? Like take it out of the box, plug it in the wall, and never have to plug it in again? No. Every day, for hours, he had this thing plugged into the wall. Those are the 5-year-olds who are coming to our schools in the fall. That's the future that they face. How do we build a model that makes sense for them? How do we do what our forefathers in education did, and take the best of education and bring it to the next level? How do we create the model that we need for them to build the knowledge, the skills, the abilities that they need to face the future, to build the knowledge, skills, and abilities that they're going to need to solve the problems that they are passionate about? That's what we do in education, and I'm excited to be here. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jamie. And I want to thank you personally for coming out here and sharing your message. In Fort Worth ISD, we're focused on excellence and equity. And when we talk about the role of technology and the knowledge, skills, and ability, this is really something we're going to double down on moving forward. Narrow our focus, align tightly, increase our expectations and opportunities, and using the frame of the future, our next generation learning, our new learning model. We appreciate you setting the table for us to do that in 2017-18. We thank all of you at the campuses for being part of the Convocation 2017. Hey, look, the words are there. We appreciate that, and thank you for everything you do to fulfill our mission of preparing all students for success in college, career, and community leadership, right? Elena and Antonio, all, A-L-L. Thank you very much, and we, again, thank the award-winning Southwest Jazz Band who's going to take us out and get us ready for the school year. Have a great day and a great 2017-18 school year. Thank you.